Hello and welcome to another video and podcast from Fantasy Football Scout. Today it's all about Sky Sports Fantasy Football with £50,000 up for grabs for the winner. My name is Joe and joining me ahead of Game Week 31's fixtures is Luke. Luke, how are you?
Yeah, not bad. It's a good week of football actually. I think watching it anyway, at least. Fantasy wise, middling. Treading water. I think is the expression in Sky at the moment for many of us, and I believe you're the same. It's very hard to make any moves, isn't it? Anyway.
I've gone up 12 places. I'm about 500th. What did I get? I was 547, and I've gone up to 538. I do tell you, I've gone up 9 places.
Wow. There you go.
I got 95 points, and I thought, wow, I'm going to do really well here. And then checked the leaderboard, and it was pretty much the same. So,
yeah. Everyone's got the same team, haven't they? This second overhaul really has. It's what we said at the time. When the second overhaul comes at that point, and everyone wants to pick the best players. Everyone has the same information. The prices are static. We're all going to end up with 8 of the same 11 players. So,
and as you say, often it's the same names at the top as well. So those in the top 100, you go through there and you can see the same names appearing every year. And I think that's probably the same in the top 500 these days as well. So the people I'm competing against are probably watching this or watching other podcasts and videos about Sky, and they know what they're doing. And
seasoned veterans.
So they probably all, like me, took out Lewis Dunk and got Azpilicueta in.
If they didn't already have him, exactly.
So they joined me in getting absolutely 0 points for my new captain, and in fact,
tragic.
They joined me in being costing Rafinha's 8 points because I would have captained him, and I didn't even bother looking what Lewis Dunk got. I just hoped it was nothing.
I think it was 1 point, but I'm not sure.
1 point. I'm 9 points down. Nevertheless, I've got Azpilicueta, so I'm not feeling too glum about it, and at least I'm moving up the rankings.
Well, this season is different to every other Sky season we've had in the fact that we already said around the Christmas period you could look at the table and see that most of the best players historically, if there was such a thing in the Hall of Fame, were already in there, which doesn't usually happen. Usually it's a very much a chase in the last couple of months where finally they'll be there. But because just the way that the league's gone about this season, and obviously the match days and COVID, and I think there's all sorts of factors that have contributed towards it. I think especially having the double game weeks and the fact that Man City had so many games early on, obviously that was your time to take the advantage to get your main sort of bump in rank. And later in the season, it's a little bit harder. So it's almost had a little bit of a switch around from the end to the middle of where the main points to catch up were. And as a result, now it's very hard to make ground because everyone knows what they're doing in the top 200 as opposed to other seasons where quite a lot won't, and they'll have hardly any transfers.
And I always used to be a much more risk-taking manager in Sky, and then in FPL I would be quite steady, but it's completely different in Sky. I'm not taking those maverick moves, and perhaps I should be. It's clearly the only way. So those, for example, who got Pereira in, why would you get Pereiras from West Brom against Chelsea? But if you did, you were doing well on the week.
I'd say you were absolutely mad. But I think you make a good point, though. I've made this point before with Sky. I mean, it doesn't matter where you finish at the end of the day because there's no Hall of Fame. There's nothing to sort of hang your hat on and say this is my record. No one cares. It disappears. In fact, you can make it up after the season's gone. Everyone would believe you. So to be honest, it's go for it, isn't it? Go for your mini leagues. Go for the cash. And if it fails, we will go again in a couple of months. So
yeah, definitely. So I'm just doing as best as I can and hope. But I think I'm going to start making a slightly more maverick moves. But as soon as I do, and as soon as I say it on here, other people might think, "Oh, I might do that," and maybe I've got that thought from someone else. And there we go. A big haul of mirrors. Let's have a look at the latest Tier 2 Man of the Match stars for the week just going. Man of the Matches, Guita from Crystal Palace, annoyingly. Lingard, KDB, that's interesting. Fabinho from Liverpool. Bruno, good to see Bruno there. Pereira, as we mentioned. Rafinha, I was pleased he got the man of the match, even though I didn't captain him. Kane, obviously very pleased that he got the man of the match. And Ings as well. And passing Tier 2, basically the Man City defenders. I'm not sure against Leeds they might be. I'm not sure if they'll be the best bet. Leeds tend to. they'll make them work, and they're not going to enjoy the possession and slick passing. I don't think.
Yeah, Leeds rarely give up passing bonus to the opponents. However, of late they've kind of dropped off a little bit more than usual. I think they've kind of stopped being quite so gung ho. And Chelsea got it recently again. Aspilicueta, not Aspilicueta. Yeah, he might have as well. But Christensen definitely did.
Yeah.
So if Chelsea can do it against them, I suppose Man City and Liverpool, who are playing them soon, could as well. But yeah, it's a risky one.
Definitely. Nat Phillips and Kabak at Liverpool. We think they're definite centre back pairing. I mean, I think they seem to be nailed on, but they're obviously cheaper than the likes of Salah, and intriguing with Liverpool's assets. So this could be a way to differentiate, to start doubling up on the likes of Liverpool. Højbjerg, Neves and Fred. So Neves an option there if you want to go into Wolves and get a differential, but I'm not sure you're going to get too much there. Tackles tier 2, Connor Cody, which is good to see him there because he is generating interest with Wolves' good fixtures. Fabinho again, Neves and Kovacic at Chelsea. Saves tier 2, Martinez. I'm not moving Martinez. I've got Neto. And I know a lot of people are thinking Martinez to Patricio.
Yeah, well, that was the move. That was the move. Was it yesterday or the day before? That was the move to do that, wasn't it? Really, if you were going to.
But I'm just not. I'm not particularly interested in the Wolves' defence as much as I am. No. Well, in anyone from Wolves, but I'm happy with Neto. I mean, he got you got him as well. It's 5 points. I'll take that. And if he can keep chipping away at the points, I'll be happy with that. But Martinez there, he's still working out the saves. They got essentially an extra fixture coming. Was using FPL parlance there, but yeah, they got an extra fixture coming. Pope, Guita, Johnston, Ramsdale, Sanchez. So yeah, I mean, why get rid of Martinez? I think shots tier 2, Alonso there. So that's a way of getting. Being different with the Chelsea defence, get the guy that's getting the shots tier 2 at the back, Alonso. Armstrong, Bruno again. So Bruno Fernandes got man of the match and shots tier 2. This is good. This is what we like to see, especially with those. His ownership is going, just a tiny bit. People moving away a little bit. Pereira, Kane there. Chris Wood, and I'll put in brackets again, because over the last month he's got that 2 or 3 times, and
historically he's actually been pretty good for this. Actually, this season he's not been great until late, but in past seasons he was one of the people I've looked at who does get the shots tier quite often.
He, I know it's FPL our captaincy video focus, but nevertheless it does highlight the players that are good across all formats. But did that video and podcast with David earlier in the week. And Chris Wood's name, when we were looking at all the tables, the shots, Chris Wood's name keeps cropping up, and he's getting the goals as well. He's no longer on the goals imminent table. He's surpassed that because his goals happening.
Yeah, well, the forwards are in dire straits if we're considering Wood, and it happens every season at some point. Wood's name comes to the fore because
I am genuinely considering him in FPL, but I'm not considering him in Sky. So that just goes to show how the Maverick mindset has altered between the formats. Ings, Richarlison and Mitrovic, not particularly interested in those. Ings possibly on the back burner for me, but
yeah, Ings is great, and he has got arguably probably one of the best captain days coming up. But the fixtures after that are just pretty awful, and given he's already been injured at least twice, possibly 3 times this season, then it just seems like you're playing with fire.
In a limited transfer games, I just haven't got time for Ings.
No.
So let's have a look at your team, see where you're at. We've alluded to a lot of these players. So you got Martinez in goal, Aspilicueta, Stones and Diaz, Antonio, Neto, Fernandes, Rafinha, Kane, Calvert-Lewin and Salah. So, I mean, I got just under 100 points. You must have got broadly that as well.
Yeah, I got 94 points, which, I mean, it was okay. When you were listing the man of the match people there's obviously a lot of popular names, but the problem is everyone's got them. So Rafinha, Kane, Bruno, I mean, I've got them. Virtually everyone else has. I mean, I did the popular captain route of Aspilicueta was my captain for one of them. Kane was my captain for the other, which outscored Bruno, but not by too much. And then and Neto was my captain for the Wolves game. Was he? Actually, was he not? I can't remember who was my captain. No, Calvert-Lewin, sorry, was my captain, who did nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it wasn't great. The captains could have been better. But overall, I was pretty happy with my team. My biggest problems really moving forward are obviously Antonio now, who is injured. And you just mentioned that with Ings. I think Antonio has now cost me about 4 or 5 transfers in total throughout the season.
Yeah.
Such is my love and faith. And even in that period, I have held off when I've wanted to get him as well for certain amounts of time. And he's been fine when he's in my team. He's not been amazing, but he has been pretty good. But it's just not worth the transfer costage. No. It's just ridiculous. I mean, if I'd have just sat in, any defender really there in his place who would just rack up a few points, it'd probably be better. So he's my main issue, along with Stones, who's obviously just not playing games. So
played in midweek in the Champions League.
Exactly, and obviously Man City moving forward now with being them all in the cups, and I think we've got a few questions now, so I'll leave that till the end.
I don't even think Diaz is nailed for this week against Leeds.
No, could be.
Nathan Ake been pictured a lot in training. Pepper's, he talks a little bit about rotation, but he's basically said, I'm really going to rotate for this one. So it would not surprise me to see Ake, Laporte, all these kind of guys, and yeah.
Well, their tie hangs in the balance now, doesn't it? So I don't think it's necessarily about rest, because he likes to have people to have momentum, and let's be fair, their whole team's brilliant. I think it's more about if they pick up an injury. Like if Diaz plays that game and he gets an injury, which could happen to anyone, then people would point the finger and say, "What are you doing?" Because then if they go out against Dortmund because they can't handle Haaland, not that Diaz had a great time handling Haaland, you see him get flown across. The...
Well, he was sort of, Guardiola was saying, was sort of, I think he was quite critical of Cancelo. And when he brought Jesus on, his indication was that he himself hadn't got the tactics quite right, and Jesus would have been perhaps a better bet for him rather than Cancelo doing some of that, trying to do that.
This is Pep in the Champions League. He often tries different things, doesn't he? And then at least this time he's kind of said maybe he got it a little bit wrong in the past. He's clearly got it wrong on the evidence, but didn't really come out and say so, I suggest.
It makes me wonder that Cancelo could actually be one that plays, if anyone's still got him.
I honestly think if we're talking about now, that there's just too many. There's always ifs and buts with Man City, but now there are so many that it's just not worth going with them. I just think overall you're better off having none in your team now. We could easily pay for that. Diaz could play, for example, how many games have Man City got left now? Is it 7? Or have I made that? Okay. So let's say Diaz plays 6 of them because he's pretty nailed. He could obviously outscore virtually anyone else you put in, but it's a risk. Apart from him, I wouldn't trust anyone else to outscore many of the people who've got 7, 8 games.
No. So one of the things that those that have still got, say, Gundogan in their team or De Bruyne, they're going to be looking at that early fixture that's coming up in game week 31. It is the first match on the Saturday as well, so we'll see the lineups, so we can alter accordingly. But I think it would pay if you've got Gundogan or De Bruyne and they're not playing and you've just had enough. That's the moment where you just say, right, Diaz or nothing, or even nothing. Or even if you've got Stones and you've got the transfers to make, have a plan in mind. What would you recommend those people do? Is there a good team to go to from a City asset?
Yeah, I personally think Leicester's the real obvious one, just because they've got those 2 single match days that are coming up amongst really good fixtures for the next 5. The problem with them is we don't get to see their team sheets. There's COVID issues for Soyuncu. There's injury concerns in terms of Maddison and Barnes when they're coming back. So it's not an ideal situation to pick your favourite option. And I don't particularly think Vardy's worth the cash, although obviously he could be for this run. So it's tricky, but I think Chelsea have obviously still got a great run. Again, it's similar with them. You're not sure who to target outside of Azpilicueta. And then the other one you already mentioned really for me is Liverpool. I just think their run is that good. And now it looks like there's a decent chance they might go out of the Champions League. Suddenly they're going to have to focus on getting into the top 4. So I think that Kabak and Phillips are pretty good options as the cheap set. I know Trent was criticised in Europe recently last night for his bad defence form, but that doesn't matter in terms of fantasy. I still think he'll be starting right back, and he's looked really good going forward. So I do actually really like him moving forward as well.
Yeah, I've I'm just looking. I didn't even look at notice the price of Nat Williams before, but
It's 5.1.
It's 5.1, which is great.
It's mad, isn't it? The thing is, we don't really need. I mean, I don't particularly need cash at the moment.
No.
So he would have been ridiculously like a godsend if Liverpool could keep their. I mean, the fixtures and their clean sheets. He also can get passing bonus. I mean, it doesn't particularly fill me as in confidence as a player himself, but for 5.1 million, it basically allows you to do anything with your team. I said I don't really need the cash at the moment. At the end of the day, everyone's got virtually Kane or Salah, who are the most expensive people. Yeah. The defenders of the likes of Azpilicueta, Stones and Diaz, etc., are cheaper than they've ever been in the game, so you don't need to go right to that top level of premium defenders.
Yeah.
And then Bruno Fernandes, he's probably much cheaper than he should be, and everyone else is sort of quite low in price.
I mean, Rafinha is cheap. They're all unbelievably cheap there. So I don't necessarily need the money. So I mean, Kabak is 8 million.
I looked at Phillips and Kabak because I am eyeing up one of those two, and I wanted to see whether there was a better option amongst them. But they are so close; it's unbelievable. They've basically both got absolutely zero goal for it. Phillips tiniest little bit more, it seems, but it's just going to be because he's probably got closer on a corner one time.
Also, I mean, if we are looking at doubling up, going into Liverpool, I mean, we mentioned him before, Fabinho. He's 8.4 midfielder, 101 points. So it's a nice steady ticking over.
He is a decent option. I mean, he was man of the match, wasn't he? And he was fantastic in that game. I do really like him. I suppose the other way you can flip it on its head. They're playing Aston Villa this week in between the Champions League game, where they're really going to want to win the Champions League game. So you could argue maybe they rest a few in that game against Villa because they want to proper go for the Champions League. And then let's say they do go through the Champions League, suddenly it might switch around and they focus on that rather than the league. So it's a very tricky time with Liverpool to work out how it's going to work.
Yeah, definitely. But there's some definite options there. I'll quickly put my team out because it's pretty much the same. There you go. The only completely the same except for I've got Vestergaard instead of Stones. So for me, Martinez, Azpilicueta, Vestergaard, Diaz, Antonio, Neto, Fernandes, Rafinha, Kane, Calvert-Lewin, and Salah. So what I'm looking at, so I've got 9 transfers left. I need Leicester. That's the only transfer I'll make barring injury, but of course injury might dictate that. So what I want to wait for is Moyes' press conference about Antonio. He can be quite vague. He's a bit of a few knocks and niggles kind of guy.
Yeah, for me he's just done. Whatever Moyes says, I think he's gone, because how many times has he been injured like this and then been back the next week? I don't think it ever happens.
So I think I'm going to have to keep Vestergaard for a little while longer, or I could make another transfer there. But Antonio to Maddison is something I'm very much considering rather than to Fofana, because Sionchu's the one we want, but he's got COVID, or he's had a positive test for COVID, so I don't know what kind of Sionchu's going to emerge from that. It could have some horrible long COVID thing and it take months. It could be a few weeks. It could be back in about, I remember Salah had it and he was back firing after about a week.
Whereas St Maxim seemed to be affected quite badly.
And I think Havertz was the same. So I don't know what's going to emerge from that. Fofana, so if they revert to 4 at the back, Fofana's likely to be the one missing out, which would be harsh. They might stick with 3 at the back. Basically, question marks. In a limited transfer game, I don't want them. Whereas Maddison, he's a sexy pick, and he's just more interesting.
If you remember, I actually went Maddison before the overhaul, a month before it, and he was great for me. He was one of the reasons why I started jumping so high alongside a load of City players. Is I had Maddison, who was a differential, and he was doing very well. And even after overhaul, when I cut him, he did very well for the next few games as well. So I was kind of annoyed that I did cut him.
Yeah.
I think he's great. It's just like you say, at the moment, there's so much uncertainty around what's going to happen with Leicester. And this is obviously pre us hearing any news from the Leicester press conference. But you nailed it there for me. For me, the 2 best options would be Maddison and Soyuncu. I do really like Fofana, and if they stick to a back 3, I'd arguably prefer him because he's cheaper and he's just as good. But there's just that concern that when Barnes and Maddison come back, if they switch to a 4 at the back, and Leicester fans seem to think that Soyuncu's probably ahead of Fofana. I don't think there's any guarantees there, but So the fact that you might miss the West Ham game is really annoying because that's kind of a time you'd want to bring him in. Like I say, if you look at, for me in particular, I've got Stones. So let's say I look at that City game versus Leeds and Stones isn't in the lineup. Leicester are playing at 3 o'clock. So I'd love to just take him straight out and put Soyuncu in, but I don't know whether he's going to play. If I go for Fofana, he then might not play many of the games afterwards if they go to a back four. So suddenly it's a complete waste of transfer.
I mean, in my third Sky team, which I'm just sort of playing around with, really, I'm not, obviously not going for rank, but I'm just sort of just playing around with that. And I've had Tielemans in there since it's
he's a solid pick.
And he's a solid pick. If you're after a solid pick that will be low owned, just checking, he's on 142 points. He's 8.3 million. He's been ticking over quite nicely for me. I think usually get some kind of tier, and he's got a goal and assists in him as well. So yeah, he's an option. I personally prefer Maddison in my main team, but Tielemans is definitely he hasn't been injured any time I've had him. I can't recall him being injured this season.
One thing I will say with him as well is that Vardy, at the end of every game, he looks like he's dead on his feet. He's limping, 34 years old. So I think in some of these easier games, if Leicester are 2-3 up, and they're obviously playing Iheanacho up top at the moment as well, there's a good chance that Vardy might come off just to rest him for the last 20, 30 minutes. Mm-hmm. Now, if that happens, Tielemans has been on penalties historically, hasn't he? And Leicester do get penalties a lot. So I would not be surprised to see Tielemans pick up a couple of penalties in this little run, just by happenstance. And on that note, Iheanacho has obviously been fantastic recently. I do really like him. I just can't bring him in Sky in a limited game where I just worry whether he'll play. I mean, that's one for the punters, I think. If you've got a lot of transfers and you're trying to catch up, by all means, go for him. Enjoy your points. You'll probably do well. I can't personally go there.
I would be tempted, even with limited transfers, to think, what the hell? But it's space. I want Kane and Salah still. And as we've discussed with the fixtures, I think Everton are looking quite key. You might you
don't want one, but you kind of need one for that single day. Unless you want to go Arsenal, which is a big no-no as well.
Everton are quite a handy team at the moment, and they do have an extra fixture to schedule in. So
you can't take Calvert-Lewin out at the moment, which is really annoying.
So Iheanacho, there's no room for. So that's why I'm looking at the likes of Maddison and the Soyuncu COVID test has meant it's Maddison or Tielemans are the ones I'm looking at.
Maddison's also got the England charge to go for. I think Maddison's going to be great for this back end. It's just, if you ask me to, I'd love to have both of them, but if you say to me who do you prefer out of Maddison and Soyuncu, it would still be Soyuncu just because of the nature of Sky. I know that he will get 10 pointers. Like 10 pointers are pretty much guaranteed with him because of the passing bonus and a clean sheet throughout this run at some point. Whereas Maddison, it's very much going to be 2 points, occasionally 4 for shots on target. He might get an assist to the man of match. Of course, he can haul and get goals, and I expect he will do. But from now to the end of the season, I think Soyuncu would probably outscore Maddison just about. There won't be much in it, and it could go either way, of course.
My main decision really is Antonio to Maddison and Vestergaard to Fofana. And really, in that, try and target the good fixtures for a while, and that's going to be my point of difference to try and climb up the rankings. Because, as you said, Soyuncu can get those points. Fofana can get those points if he is playing. And if they carry on with that back three, so that could be an extra 10 points for 3 or 4 matches. So it's an extra 40, could be an extra 40 points on those that perhaps have to keep or don't know what to do with Vestergaard, who, as people can see on the screen there, he's got a big fat 1 point there.
Vestergaard's been utterly tragic, hasn't it? And I apologise because I had him in my team. I picked him up. I think many people did. The fixtures were there. I think it's just we went on this narrative that when Vestergaard came back, Southampton would revert to the excellent team that they were before, keeping clean sheets. He was hitting passing tiers. I mean, the thing with Vestergaard is goal threat's there as well, as we know, and that's still there. I mean, he's probably. I still believe he's going to score before the season's out. I think it's almost impossible he won't. But the main thing, really, aside from them just shipping goals all over the place, is the fact that he hasn't been hitting the passing tiers either. So he's just not worth it when that's not happening. So that's it, really. At the end of the day, it's just unfortunate. I mean, sometimes a player comes into a team or comes back, like you could say Diaz comes into Man City or Van Dijk comes into Liverpool, and suddenly their defence is just like amazing because that one player's come back that makes all the difference to the defence. So I don't think you can beat yourself up by thinking Vestergaard coming into the Southampton would have changed them defensively. No. It just hasn't happened.
No. So, and also, as you said, the fixtures, I'm just not that interested in Southampton. Let's have a look at the Game Week 31 fixtures, because we do have some other fixtures announced for the rest of April to bear in mind, which we can touch on. But for Game Week 31, looking at the captaincy, Friday we've got Fulham against Wolves. So a lot of people are thinking Wolves there. You and I have Neto. We've gone down that route. I'm personally quite happy with that. Other people have possibly already got Patricio in. They might be thinking I need a Wolves attacker. But I think if I didn't have a Wolves player now and I was on quite much fewer transfers, I'd just probably sack this one off.
I think I'm probably with you. I mean, Wolves games are so great. Oh, it doesn't matter that Patricio was awful the other night. If he, similar to the Dunk thing, who was awful before, if in the single match day now he picks up a 9-pointer against Fulham as captain, changed to 18, and then as home to Sheffield United the week after, suddenly it was worth it. So I don't begrudge people doing it. For me, I do not want to touch Wolves' defence because I don't trust them. Although they did pick up passing and tackling, I think Cody did, as you mentioned last week. They don't usually, and I don't like touch defenders who don't. So that all led me to it's Neto or no one. So I decided to go Neto. Yeah. And again, he played brilliant. He's in that mould of midfielders that can pick up 2 points just even when they play brilliant.
He looks like their best player.
Yeah, but he just seems to find a way of always getting a tiny little bit of a return. If it's a shot bonus, an assist or something, he's just got that gift. So. Yeah. To be honest, if I was going to go for anyone, I would go for the Fulham defence. I'd just go for Adebayor and hope to get a 10-pointer if you really wanted someone. But otherwise, it's a Neto or no one for me.
Yeah, I'm the same. I think in a game like FPL where you've got a bench, the likes of Cody or cheaper players, then Donker even, they're all viable. But in Sky 11, you want them all performing, and the defence just isn't performing, especially if they've got 4 at the back. That seems to be their kryptonite. 4 at the back is just,
Well, on that note, Bolly comes back. They go to a back 5. There's a chance they get clean sheets moving forward and maybe bonus. So you could chance it, but I've got Neto, so there's no reason for me.
Neto's my one. Moving on to Saturday, City against Leeds, Liverpool against Villa, and Crystal Palace against Chelsea. So for me, I'm not going to mess about Salah against Villa. I'm going for it, even though he's at home.
Yeah,
and he hasn't been doing as well at home, but I'm just going to go for that one. I just think he's going for the golden boot. They're going to want to keep momentum on. He's just in selfish scoring mode.
Well, I'll just throw. It's what I said earlier. They're now the balance of the Champions League is there, and is it 3 or 4 days later? 4 days later because it's Saturday, isn't it? So Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. They play on Wednesday. They're playing the Champions League now. I don't want to scaremonger. I expect they will play their top team and they have to go for the top 4 as well. So it probably will be first team. But I just think, if Salah or anyone was to get injured in that game, then, the Champions League, they can basically kiss it goodbye. So I think there is a chance. I mean, more so, I guess, if Liverpool are 2 or 3-0 up, that they come off early, just in case. But so for those reasons, I'll probably either be on Salah as well, despite saying that, or more likely, despite my tragic experience with it recently, is Azpilicueta. Because I just think surely they revert back to type and that was more of a freak game. I could be wrong, but Azpilicueta against Palace, that screams a 10-pointer again to me. I feel like 10 to 20 points there for Azpilicueta as captain. It's quite safe, and Salah will do well to match it. Yeah,
that's what I thought against West Brom.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And, it could be awful.
But then, you would think that was hopefully that was a one-off.
No. But I will say, actually, if Man City, we do get to see the Man City lineup. So if Gundogan is in the starting lineup and you've still got him, he's an easy captain, isn't he? Yeah. Diaz as well. I know we just said he might not pick up passing bonus, but home to Leeds, they're just a machine. You could consider Diaz as well, I think.
All to consider. So it's quite a tricky one. There's an opportunity to differentiate your team, and depending if I can get the captaincy right and other people don't on that day, there's the gain. It could also go the other way. So there's choice. Looking at the Sunday, Burnley against Newcastle, West Ham against Leicester, Tottenham against Manchester United, Sheffield United against Arsenal. Now this is another opportunity to be a bit different, but depending on how many transfers you've got left.
Chris Wood straight in as captain, yeah?
Yeah, Chris Wood straight in, captain. I was more thinking of their Sheffield United match. Now, you don't see the Arsenal lineup, but the likes of Aubameyang, Lacazette, this is where This is where your maverick moves would be. No,
Yeah,
I wouldn't do that. I mean, unless you got like about 20 transfers, you maybe consider that.
Well, I wouldn't even say that. I'd say if you're chasing, Arsenal's fixture run from now to the end of the season is probably the best of all the teams. So, go Lacazette, go Aubameyang, go Saka, and hope they put in worldy performances to the end of the season. Yeah, I hope they play is part of the issue. Yeah. So I won't be touching it at all because I just think Arsenal are rubbish basically, and I can't trust them to play like you said. But I can see the argument why some people might want to do it. I mean, Sheffield United is still a very good game, isn't it? Yeah. So they could easily perform in that one.
I think it's Tierney's injury. I think one of the
videos they've just broke it now. He's out for 6 weeks. Or something.
Oh, is he? Well, that's the end of my interest in Arsenal then. I was talking to David on one of the videos, and he was saying that he was just recounting all the times Arsenal been utterly flat, like really bad, and every time the key denominator is lack of Tierney. He's absolutely vital to their attacking play.
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me. Modern teams need these world-class fullbacks. That's where, they just need it. They need the best fullbacks, and it doesn't surprise me, to be honest. Yeah. For creating chances, you only have to watch Arsenal and see sometimes they just look, unless Odegaard's on one, they look bereft of ideas most of the time.
Definitely. So I think the best place for the captaincy is tried and tested, either Bruno Fernandes or Harry Kane. They're going to start. They're going to do something. I'm on Fernandes currently. I just think there's more routes to points with him. With Kane, you never know if he could be 2 points, it could be 7 points. Whereas Fernandes can show up, do some passing, tackling, etc., etc., and we could be looking at a nice haul, especially if he gets an assist added to that. But obviously, that West Ham Leicester game, I think those with Lingard maybe, but without if Antonio's not there. Another point that was made on one of the early videos was during the match where Antonio got injured recently. It was against Wolves. Lingard looked great, brilliant, and then when Antonio was off, Lingard did get an assist, but he had 0 shots. So from when Antonio went off, his shot potential just went, and so the theory is that Antonio is required for Lingard to do his stuff.
I'll tell you what was really annoying about that Antonio thing for me is it was probably only that last match in those first 30 minutes that you thought he actually looked back to how he actually can be. He looked really good in those first 30 minutes, and then he gets the injury. So that's really frustrating. But Lingard, I think he's still probably a good option just because he's so cheap. Midfielders are pretty crap in this game, and he's a good one. So I do like it, but I wouldn't be captaining him at home to Leicester. Leicester are a much better team than some of the teams have been playing recently as well. For me.
I'm thinking I'm probably going to be getting Maddison in, and that's a decision I have to make if I want to climb up the rankings.
Yeah, it's just because it's first game back from injury. I wouldn't suspect he sees 90 minutes. It's Kane or Bruno for me all day in this game, and I hear what you're saying. Kane's actually probably only got not that many hauls actually. Totally, he's quite consistent, but haul wise, it's not been anything super special. It's a little bit better in Sky than it is in FPL because he does pick up those shots tiers and stuff. But you're right, Bruno is probably the best pick on this day, despite Kane just scoring 2 against Newcastle. It might turn people's heads, but I expect Spurs will sit pretty deep in this game. Man United will be probably on the front foot for most of it, and it's just whether Kane gets those breakaway chances to score or a pet. I'm still undecided who I'll go for in that game, to be honest. I think Bruno is probably the safest pick, but I might chance Kane just because he's Kane, basically.
Yeah. I mean, that's the opportunity to be different as well from all of those Fernandes captainers. And then we move on to Monday. West Brom against Southampton, Brighton against Everton. I've got Calvert-Lewin, I've got Vestergaard. I hate both of them, but I hate Calvert-Lewin marginally less. So he's going to be my captain on those days. Some people might have a Brighton player knocking around. I guess.
If you've got actually thinking of that, some people might have Dunk still. If you had him, I'd be tempted to do that.
I think as well.
Yeah, I've got Calvert-Lewin. He'll be my captain, but I'm not expecting too much there. Even if he manages to get 1 goal, maybe that seems about his ceiling at the moment. It's just a bad day. That one.
If you were one of the few that had Pereira in. For his big haul last week. Pereira against Southampton, why not? Southampton defence is very bad. That is, I would definitely do that if I had Pereira, but I don't have Pereira, so I'm not one of those lucky ones.
Well, this is what I was saying earlier about Danny Ings. This is the day I meant. If you look at the lineup and Danny Ings is in it, and you want to try something different, he's a player who can get a hat trick, isn't he? So that could be one of these ones that just suddenly shoots you up 60 points. he get 15, 20 points, and then you captain him or whatever, and no one else will have him at all around you, and you will fly. Like, you just have to get lucky that happens, and he's capable. I mean, they looked a lot better recently, Southampton, at least defensively. So maybe, but again, it's not for anyone who's not chasing.
No. So let's have a look at some community questions. So I put something up today. So a few people have responded. Thank you for that. FPL Punter said, is Alexander Arnold a trap? And should we just go for Nat Phillips instead? Well, we've already spoken about the value of Nat Phillips, and he looks like he's nailed. I wouldn't call Alexander Arnold a trap, though. I just don't know whether you're going to get much more for the price. He's pretty much
I suppose that. If you ignore the price and you say that it doesn't mean anything because you might not need it, I'd still be tempted to go with Trent, despite me normally favouring the passing centre-backs, just because it's so much more exciting to me. I feel like Nat Phillips and Kabak, although they have been picking up passing, if you actually look at their history, they don't always pick up passing.
No.
I don't think they are particularly good ball-playing centre-backs overall. It's just that Liverpool are so dominant that therefore they get the chances rather than, it being a Van Dijk or whoever who could get it even if Liverpool weren't particularly good. And I do think there's pretty much zero goal. They'll probably score from a corner now, but it looks like there's pretty much zero goal threat there. So, Liverpool haven't been the best for clean sheets either. So it just feels like it could end up being not particularly good. With Trent, you've got so much to fall back on. You've got assists, you've got free kicks. I think there's still the narrative of he's going for the England game. Yeah, he had a bad game last night in the Champions League, but he wants to get in the side. That may not make a difference to performance. He could, just because you want something doesn't mean it's going to happen. But I think I would still favour Trent just about. I unfortunately can't afford him if I want to go. The only way I can afford Trent for one of my moves, for Stones, for example, is if I did Antonio to Fofana, which I may still do. But as we just discussed, Fofana then might not play the game. So it probably makes more sense for me to go Soyuncu. Therefore, I can't afford Trent, and I'll be bringing in one of Phillips or Kabak and just hope that it works. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, definitely. I wouldn't call him a trap.
No, I think he'll be good.
I think it'll be good. I'm on a wild card in FPL at the moment, and one of the things I can't do is get Alexander Arnold in. I've tried many permutations. Whereas in Sky, I'm going to start looking around for that because it's possible. I'm just thinking in terms of finding someone that's different, and if Liverpool get a clean sheet, he is their most creative threat. I think it was 11 chances created in the last 4. So there is that opportunity. There is that opportunity to get that 10 extra points or so.
Yeah, if you could say to me now that Kabak or Phillips will get passing bonus in every single game, I'd say go with them because it's a free assist. But Trent, let's not forget, can also get passing bonus. He has done it a few times, and he has that extra threat. And it's only because I don't believe those centre backs will always get passing bonus that I would say favour Trent slightly. Otherwise, it would be the centre back I'd go for.
Liam Dorian, who is the current, the reigning Sky FF champion, his thoughts on going without a Man City player, he asked, for the remainder of the season. So, I mean, you've got 2. You don't like Stones. I've got Diaz. I think I'm going to keep Diaz. I see no reason to get rid of Diaz. I don't need the money. If I needed the money, maybe. But I think him and Ederson will play almost all. Maybe they'll miss one. But there's lots of juicy Man City clean sheet potential and passing tier for me.
Yeah, it's so hard to know the answer to this. I think going with none is perfectly viable. I think it's fine. I'll be keeping Diaz just because I don't have the transfers to move him out. And like you say, I could move him out and he could do absolutely fine in those remaining games, and it was totally unworth it. I can't see that really costing me. The only thing is, if Man City have completely won the league, then why would they even play Diaz in it? Like, if it's mathematically impossible for anyone, why would they even risk him if they're in the Cups and Champions League? I mean, Pep might, but I certainly wouldn't. I wouldn't play him because there's just no need, is it? They could lose every league game like 8-0. It wouldn't matter. But yeah, I don't necessarily think that's going to be the case, and I think it's probably ends up costing you in the end, because if Diaz plays 5 of the remaining games, you might get 50 points in those games, and there've been not that many defenders that will easily match that. So I'd say bin them all apart from probably Diaz is a more than viable option.
And I think you're right about that rotation. I mentioned it on the Scoutcast. I keep thinking back to that scene in Damned United. Do you remember that where Brian Clough's Derby are in Europe, and in the middle they have an encounter with Leeds in the league, and so he decides to field his strong side still. And in the first reward trench of that match, Leeds literally murder Derby players, and they obviously get tumbled out of Europe. So I'm wondering. I don't know if Pep watches films like that, but maybe. Maybe he does. On to the questions. Tom Hartnell says, who will be your chosen Leicester player for those captaincy days? And I said to him, great question, by the way, for Tom, because we pretty much answered it, but it's worth touching on again, really. So for me, Antonio to Maddison, that's probably what I'm going to do. And Sionchu, if he was available, would be great. But Tielemans and Fofana were worth considering.
Yeah, as is Niacho, as is Barnes if he's back, as is Vardy if he's back, as is Kasper Schmeichel's viable. For me, it's Soyuncu is my favourite one. It's just annoying that he might miss this West Ham game and I've got no information. However, I mean, I don't know if anyone else will be in this position, so it might be personal to me, but I've said I'm looking to do Stones to him. So if I look on Saturday and Stones is playing Leeds, great. I mean, if he's not, then fine. I could just not do the Soyuncu move if he's not playing West Ham. And then the following week, game week 32, they don't play, do they, until the very last game. I think it's Thursday the 22nd. They play home to West Brom and you get to see the lineups. So the smart play might be to wait to that single day and then look at the lineups and then bring in who you want. And as I said, I think Soyuncu probably just favours it. So I could look at it as, Maddison, first game back from injury against West Ham, he might only get 70 minutes. So am I willing to forego 70 minutes and then get my preferred option?
Yeah.
It might make sense. Or do you just go straight in there with a Maddison? And that's a debate. So it's definitely one of those two. And I think that's just down to how much of a risk you want to take, really.
Yeah, and they've got a good run of fixtures. It tails off a bit towards the end, but in May we'll have. I don't particularly want to use a lot of transfers at the moment because in May we don't know what we're going into.
Yeah, it could be single days, couldn't it?
And there's chances are there's going to be a number of single days as well because there's matches to rearrange, which is why I'm keeping the likes of Calvert-Lewin, who has another match to rearrange, and why I'm keeping Martinez as well because Villa have got another match to rearrange. And and
on that note, I think you're right with the Maddison thing. When the games do get a bit rough for the last three weeks, I mean, Leicester, they'll probably still be fighting for top four, but clean sheets might be hard to come by with those harder games, and Maddison still will be pushing for that league, and so Maddison might end up picking up in the harder games more than you expect, maybe. Yeah,
definitely. I think we've covered a lot of ground here, so hopefully we've covered a lot of your key questions there. Before we go, just a quick reminder: the Fantasy Football Scout members area full of useful stats and information for Sky managers and FPL managers alike. So do check out the website for details. Also, if you've enjoyed this episode, just press like, and also remember to subscribe wherever you hear your Sky podcasts, and also remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel, A Fantasy Football Scout. But in the meantime, Luke, thanks so much for joining me, and good luck with your game week in Sky.
Cheers, mate. Same to you, and see you on the next one.